Welcome back to Silver Lining for Learning. I am Lydia Cao, and this is episode 273. Today, I'm joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Professor Curtis Bonk from Indiana University, Professor Punya Mishra from Arizona State University, and Professor Didi from Harvard University. And today we're going to Peru. I know Silver Lining for Learning has traveled around the world, and today's destination is Peru, where something transformative is quietly happening there. Over 6,000 young people ages 13 to 17 are running their own movement, from mental health advocacy to financial education to STEM, not as a school project, not as a resume padding, but as a legitimate steward to their own communities. So how do they build that? How do they pass tokenism, pass student voice as a buzzword, and create actual self-sustaining ecosystems where the young people themselves actually lead? So to unpack this, we are joined by three wonderful guests who are living and breathing this work. So Astrid Albujar, she is an Ancena Peru's alumna, now at Brown University, who is working towards keeping Peruvian talent rooted in Peru and stopping the brain drain. And Fiorella Chuquihuanga, who is leading leadership campaigns in rural schools while studying history and cultural management in Pura. And Franco Mosso Cobian, co-founder of Ancena Peru and currently a doctoral researcher at OISE, University of Toronto. So today's conversation is about solidarity over competition, purpose over prestige, and what education could look like if we actually trust young people with it. So without further ado, let's welcome our guests. And I'll open the floor up to our guests to briefly introduce who you are to our audience, as well as how did you end up in this space and joining this youth-led movement and what you're currently working on. So anyone feel free to jump in. Again, people are shy, so why don't I just start with the person I see first on the screen. Astrid, would you like to start?
Yeah, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I am actually so honored to be here with so many people that are working towards, a more equitable world and like basing it on education. Well, as you said, Lydia, I'm Astrid Albujar. I go to Brown University. I'm studying economics with applied mathematics and international public affairs. Most of my work has a lot to do with development in Latin America. And just as most of you believe, I think that the cornerstone is education and like getting to give the like enough agency to youth and to like young people to know what they want to do with their life. Well, I am definitely a product of what Franco brought to Peru through the Teach for All network, right, which is Enseña Peru. I entered Enseña Peru very long ago. I think it was in 2022 or 2023, when I was very sad about finishing high school, not knowing what to do right after, and of course having like certain financial constraints that I couldn't really afford university. Public universities in Peru are definitely underserved. They do not have enough spots for everyone. And I was pretty much lost until somewhere there scrolling on Instagram, I found Enseña Peru. I realized that they had a huge platform where they would teach young students like, hey, this is what leadership looks like. This is what you can do in your community. And I feel like the main thing that like led me to the work I do today is that the main thing that they taught me is that I don't need to be an adult to do anything. I don't need to have a degree. I don't need to like wait tons of years until I have all the degrees and all the knowledge to actually do some change in my community. Um, so here I am now, so many years after, having had the guide of a lot of people in the community of Enseña Peru mainly that like helped me to develop all the projects that I had and like then, just like making it a reality. um, passing tokenism, not because I wanted it in my resume, but because I genuinely want to change and I got to see change thanks to the community, right? So yeah, right now I'm working on like trying to like see how we can actually develop Latin America, how we can change Peru, and make it a more inclusive environment where like young people can actually thrive. So that's a little bit about me. But I would love to hear about Fiorella because she was also with me and we were in the same program actually when we entered Enseña Peru, and she has an amazing work. So I give it up to her.
Thank you so much. It was really exciting to see you again because I really, really admire your work. And yes, I'm excited to be here. Well, who I am, who am I? Who I am, sorry. I'm right now I'm 19 years old, and I'm a student of history and cultural management. But I have had different experiences and different in different organizations. One of them is Ticari, and Ticari empowers local communities to connect with the problems of their community. For example, a problem that is located in Lago Titicaca is is contamination. They invite to students to be conscious about that problem and how what solutions could they give to this problem. So I was part of that project, of that organization, and I was also part of leadership campaigns in rural in schools of located in rural zones. And here I it was a very great experience because it's also connected with my story because um, I'm from the rural area. I'm from a rural area. One of my purposes is to communicate these opportunities to empower students to believe in themselves because sometimes we don't believe in ourselves, and it's something that um, don't don't it's something that really don't it's like obstacle to not give all our potential. So I really was really connected with this project. And also, well, I'm studying history and cultural management. So I also seen how the museums can transform um, communities. And that's one different things that I'm working. I have done, but also how I connect with Enseña Peru. How did I discover Enseña Peru? And it was in fourth grade of secondary. So the questions started to appear, like who I am, what do I want to do, or how I visualize in a few years. And it was really overwhelming, and I didn't know how to manage how to these emotions. So for that reason, I entered to Instagram. I was scrolling, and I saw that the opportunity, and I thought, well, I want to get to know myself more. Um, but and that's how I started. Actually, I applied 2 times to Enseña Peru. The first one I was rejected, but the next I was I was accepted because my first application it was I consider more like superficial because I only did it because I wanted to have like an extracurricular activity, because my dream was to study abroad. So I watched it only like that. But then I entered to other program, Click Entre Pares, that is also related with Enseña Perú actually, and there I started to getting to know myself better and better. And so that's how I went much deeper into myself, and I applied for a second time to the short program, and this time I was accepted, and it was also because I started to go deeper into that questions that started to appear. So yeah, that's part of my history with Enseña Perú.
Thank you, Fiorella. And Franco.
Well, thank you for hosting us. First of all, I think my journey perhaps chronologically starts a little bit before Fio's and Astrid's. I'd say that the idea of young people leading today, and as opposed to in waiting for the future, which is something that people say a lot. No, I started listening. Youth are the future. Kids are the future, and I think that it was an idea that grew for about maybe 10 years before some ideas brew. No, some ideas just you hear about them over and over, and it takes several tries or events for them to continue to grow. I I must say that my own education was, I received the kind of education, the prototypical education where I don't decide anything and education is being done to me. And so I had 22 years of that education through school and university. And as an adult, I guess at some point, while we were starting our work in Peru with Enseña Perú, I worked for about 15 years at the service of my country there. It came a moment where I started to ask myself, how did they see me during all those years? No, how did they? When I was in those classrooms, how were the adults seeing me? What did I mean in their minds when I was in those learning spaces? And at the same time, in 2012, and almost 10 years before we started this work, it was the first time that students mobilized me with their actions, my imagination, or what I thought was possible. It actually occurred in Arequipa, that you said that you visited a few years ago. It was the first time that I heard students from 6th grade taking their learning. They had done a campaign of fundraising throughout the year to travel to Cusco, another region in our country. It was going to be a very special moment, but then something happened and the group decided to not go to Cusco and take the money and build a project. These were kids of like 10 years old, and take that money, and they started searching for a community where kids were their same age, but they were much more disadvantaged, at a much more disadvantage, maybe in a community in extreme poverty. And they started taking everything that they learned to establish a relationship with them. And then they visited each other, and then the kids managed to lead the building of like a library, and for those other kids. It was a very sincere case that I think was the first time. I remember it very clearly because that was the first time in 2012 that I said, this is, for me, I said, this is foreign. This is something that I don't, how can this be? What is this? And why did it happen? I've never heard of students shifting the logic of what a student could do with and in their education. And so then a series of events happened, and in the pandemic, we had the chance to bring. I'll close with this first one. This was the beginning. The other thing that bothered me was, why are we withholding tools and knowledge from students? That I, for example, the first time that I went to a program in Harvard of 9 days to gain tools to run nonprofits. And I was saying, why are we, I don't see that knowledge being socialized with young people. Why? Why is that? Why are we withholding that? Did a small experiment, did a case study with the case study that they taught me from Aravind Hospital. It's a very famous case study of social change. And found out that kids from all ages could understand and access and think strategically, and they could handle those tools. And then we built this program, started as a digital program that brought together students from all over the country that had the this idea and this motivation to contribute to their communities. It turns out that there were tens of thousands, and since then we've been able to bring a few thousand of them together.
That's wonderful. Thank you for introducing yourselves. So a couple of things really stood out to me. One is this notion of permissionless innovation, that I don't need to wait until I've gone to university, I've gone to Harvard, so for me to start something. That this notion of self-efficacy, Fiorella, you mentioned that, believing in myself, that I can be a contributor, I can make a change in this community, and I don't have to wait. And Franco, you mentioned like not withholding these tools and practice from young learner. We're not preparing them. We do not need to prepare them. The best way to prepare them is empower them with these tools and practice. For me, for them to exercise agency and create this impact. So my first question for you guys is, I would love to hear from Astrid and Fiorella. What did you guys build? What kind of movement and community did you guys build through this program? And to Franco, I would love to hear more about your practice and the organization. How did you guys empower learners to foster that permissionless innovation and self-efficacy for young people like Astrid and Fiorella to really exercise that agency? So whoever can jump in.
I'd love to jump in just because that question really, really, really excites me. Well, something that I think is very, very important to mention about this short leadership program and long leadership program that we had in Señor Peru is that projects didn't need to be a nonprofit. Projects didn't need to be, I don't know, like something big that you can put in your curriculum, right? We put a lot of emphasis into like, okay, whatever develops your leadership. And that can be something that involves hard skills, something that involves soft skills. It could be regarding your own life, it could be regarding the lives or some other people, right? So something I had a little bit of like this mix of projects where one of my biggest projects was just like to find what was going to be my academic path and why I wanted that academic path, right? So something that I really got support all throughout the program was in applying to university abroad, to any like opportunity abroad, to be honest, any educational opportunity abroad. One of my biggest projects was my entire journey to UWC. I don't know if you have heard about UWC. It's called the United World Colleges. They are a network of high schools. There are 18 of them throughout like around the whole world. And they bring people from every single country of the world, or at least most of the countries on the world. So I got selected for UWC East Africa, which is located in Tanzania. And I, well, lived in a campus with like 100 people from many different parts of the world, right? I have friends from all over the world, which really taught me a lot about myself, right? So that was one of my projects that I got a lot of support with, right? Because I need to do like a lot of introspection and like knowing myself. And sometimes we might believe like this doesn't really have that much to do with leadership, right? Because we think about it as in like, oh, I have to run a nonprofit. I have to do a bunch of things that are like tangible, right? But it was a lot about like soft skill work. What do I want in the world? Why do I want this in the world? Who am I? And like why am I this person, right? So through a lot of conversations with Franco and with other mentors and with amazing people like Fiorella, I realized that I wanted to go abroad because I wanted to see how the world worked and how I could get that toolbox of ways to think and like hard skills that I so that I can change something, right? So that was one of my projects that eventually led to Brown University, which I think is a little bit too early to mention it, but Enseña Peru, and one of the most important things about the program is that it doesn't end. It never ends because even though we're done with the like 1 year training, right? I still keep close contact with Franco. Like I remember when I arrived to Brown, I didn't know what to study. Now it's just like having Zoom calls with Franco and like, hey, I don't know what to do. I need some help. I still had some like meetings with other people from the community. Like one of my close friends, her name's Sujai. She also went to the same program. I was like, hey, I don't know what to do. I need some help, right? So it's like it never stops. You will always have the support of the community. But anyways, and then the other hard project, like kind of like tangible thing that I did is this community that is now not that active. I'm still trying to deal with that. But it's called peer reviews. It was basically, again, since I was really like passionate for broadening the access to education, right, democratizing it. I knew that in Peru, the education situation is very, very, very challenging. Again, high schoolers are not prepared for university and what university demands. Rural education is just really, really not efficient at all. There are not enough. There are not enough spaces in public universities. It's really hard to get in. You have to, there's no holistic application. There's nothing like that. You just have to pass the entrance exam. And every year they make it harder and harder and harder because they have less and less and less spots, right? And then private education is definitely another, just a privilege that a lot of families can't afford. It's pretty expensive. It goes way above the minimum wage. And it's just not a reality. In my case, it wasn't a reality for me either. So I saw the like huge pool of other institutions abroad, right? That were like, hey, you're talented, you want to change the world, you can come in here with me and I'll teach you, right? So I realized that, well, if I have this knowledge, why don't I give it to everyone else, right? And I knew that a lot of other people knew like, oh, there's this scholarship and this other scholarship and universities in here, universities in this other country, but a lot of them didn't know how to like navigate the application process. So peer reviews was a lot about like youth that had already gone abroad, that like could give some tips and tricks for the essays, for the resume, for the asking for a recommendation letter, and all these things that I mean are very special to the North American system, I would say, especially for the US. And I imagine it might be the same situation for Canada. I'm not that sure. Um, so like we kind of like guide them through, right? And I have to admit that it was very challenging because I myself was not a student from abroad, right? So I was just like trying to connect the people that were already outside and be like, hey, can we like get your talents to help the people in here? It ran for a couple years very steadily. We had more than 1,000 people engaged virtually. We run a lot of workshops. I connected with a lot of people from the same community, right, Enseña Peru. Um, and we really, really, I think we might have not changed the life of everyone, right? But I think we did do some impact in some lives. And I think that's what really the program taught me, that you don't have to change the world. You can change some people's worlds, right? And in this case, it changed mine and it changed the world of some people as well. But yeah, that was a little bit about me. I know Fiorella has done a bunch of really interesting things, especially with hard work, and with like more of these tangible organizations. So Fiorella, if you would like to share.
Okay. Yes. And well, um, to start, like following the idea of Astrid, the projects not necessarily need to be like tangible. One of my project, it was more about like changing mentalities. And specifically, I created this project that is called Losta. lost of being lost. It compounds of two words, lost, of being um, not not having something really really sure, and a the of always, like all, being always lost. That is something that never finishes, but through our life there are points where we don't know what to do. And that's how I felt when I was in fourth grade of secondary. Also, it intensified when I was in my fifth grade of secondary, my last grade of high school. So um, the context that surround me, it was like, you need to know your career already. So I was like, wait, please, I don't know what to do. And you like they my context told me that I needed to have the answers, and to be honest, I didn't have that answers. And as me, there were also a lot of teenagers that they didn't know how to process all these questions, because it's really really deep, and maybe, I don't know if it's a good choice of word, but maybe existential, like questions that really make you think and think, and all that type of question, like who am I, and who I want to be. Like, it's really overwhelming, and when we don't know how to manage them. And so for that reason, I created this project where we could we could like talk about um, ourselves, or how we are going through this period of time. And for that reason, the last year of 20 2023, it ended with a meeting where we can reflect about the year, and how we, how we did it. Sorry, how we did it, and not with and how we did it, but with a kind way, like in a friendly way, not like um, be feeling guilty about what we didn't do, but what we can do and how we feel. Because a story, I consider, is a really really potent tool, like talking about the only like talking with others. It's a really really potent tool. And like sometimes we only want to feel hear it, like other person to hear you. um so in that way is that and for that reason is that I created this project. And it was not something that I visualized for a long time. It was only something that I created through the year. But also I was also part of different organizations, and one of them was Wake Up Now. And this organization wanted to empower young people to believe in themselves. Because, as I said, when we are teenagers, we don't really know exactly what we want to do. So the first step to to get to know us is to believe in ourselves, like um, to empower ourselves, and really like believe that we can do something. And that kind of thinking I really develop in the short program of PDL, and also in the long program of PDL. And it's something that we were creating together in the ecosystem of PDL. So yeah.
Franco.
I think to answer the question of our practice, maybe I can complete part of the story, both of what Fiorella and Astrid would continue to say. No, just a brief is that they, I've known them for several years, and so this is just a piece of the impact, peer review of their own impact, no, peer reviews and LOSTA, because how that branches, how that energy, that kindness branches across all the movement. I personally have seen it, both of them and hundreds of others of their peers, because they have also been youth guides in other programs, and they've facilitated workshops with over 100 people, and done doctoral level research around student leadership. And so there's so many varieties. And the reason why I make this brief comment was, I think, something that Astrid said in the very beginning of this one, was that I've been reflecting a lot about this. It's a number of mindsets, I would say, the work that we do, because the details of the program design are one thing, but the mindsets that inform how you design an initiative like this are I think what mattered for us. And I think that I'll say it like that. Astrid said it, I think, better than what I'm about to say. It is not, what we do is not program bounded. Programs are a part of what we do, but it is not program bounded. What I mean program bounded is, and I've also done that in previous stages of my work, that is, you develop a relationship with young people for the duration of a program that has a beginning and an end. And most organizations and doing youth work right now behave like that, no? I'll have a relationship with you only until the last day of the program, then you're part of the stats of the program, no? And we move on to the next cohort. And this is a problem worldwide for civil society organizations that have alumni. Many call them alumni, no? What is the relationship with them? That for me is program bounded, no? In our case, I would say is more commitment bounded in a sense, because the logic was, okay, it is one thing to run leadership programs for 28-year-olds, already went through major life transitions, etc. It is another thing to run leadership programs for 15-year-olds that have major life transitions across their life, no? And so this, I don't think Fio and Astrid know this, but the first cohort, because there was the second cohort, the first cohort, when we ran in 2021, the first program, there wasn't anything else, and there wasn't any plan. We just had graduated 75 people during the pandemic of the very first 7-week program. And then we thought, is that gonna be it? So we graduated 75 people, the very first, no, in 2021. Is that it? So are we saying goodbye to each other and hoping that things are going to be well? And it turned into an ethical imperative. Right? We couldn't do that. That's when it turned from program-based to commitment-based. That's the first, no? And I think that we've tried to foster among all people involved, to an extent, a commitment, I would say it colloquially, a commitment to walk together through life. And we meet when we meet, no? Our first meeting, let's say, was within a program, but then afterwards, that's, I've said it at some points, it's very explicitly, it's a lifetime commitment. It might sound very extreme, but it is like that. Or it might seem too burdensome, I don't know, to some people, but this is how our first fundamental mindset. We walk together from now on, no? Because of that, the second mindset is the approach, no? What exactly are we doing? Are we running a program? Are we building a community? And we chose, actually, we did it without putting a name to it. I just learned 4 months ago what is its name, but this is a community development approach. What we did, which was to foster solidarity and agency between everyone not depending on anyone in particular, no? And this is a kind of practice, I would say, that is much more organic, is much more responsive to what happens in the group, is much more celebratory of all kinds of solidarity and mutual support going in every direction and paying attention to what's happening, and then just trying to foster it among a large group of people, of which we three are, some of them, three of them. I'd say that is another mindset, important mindset into our actions. The other thing was something that I consider a personal change, two personal changes that really drove our work. One is the program-based thing, the program-bounded logic. It gravitates towards putting a label on the young person based on the program. No, so you run a program of citizenship, then you see, people would tend to see the young person through the label of citizenship, no, and so on and so forth, no, financial education, etc., or leadership. We started with this label. Let's say I didn't know that it was going to be a placeholder that will quickly lose ground, because when we started moving forward as a community, and people started finding the agency of saying, I don't need to, even inside the community, I don't need to ask for permission to anyone to contribute to someone else. No, so students just started showing solidarity. We've discussed, no, that many of us were very comfortable with not knowing what was going on half the day, and then hearing about it later, that two students helped each other, they created something. It was really, really beautiful. And that meant also a proximity with the lives of the young people that cannot be contained within the label of leadership. And that became really important. If we started with a program of leadership, then we moved across the years to an experience of all of our lives in which it is welcomed to discuss the fears and the transitions and question the role of leadership and projects even in our lives, no, to the point where we now share a culture where, yeah, it is great to do leadership, it is great to run projects, etc., but even without it, even if it didn't happen for years, the value, the whole person value, is something that drives our interactions. And so in our groups, in our daily interactions, we don't just always talk about the next project, no? We talk about life as a whole. And then I'd say, I'll mention three, I'm talking too much. I'll mention three more, and just, we can, if it's interesting, pick it up. The transition from leadership to stewardship. Two very different things. Stewardship is take care of something for someone else. So what were we taking care of? That's the question with that principle, no? If we became stewards, taking care of things. Revisiting the relationship with the adult world. What do adults have to do in all of this community? And the complexities of that. Yeah, I'd say that those are some of the most important mindsets that led at work so far. And we're still learning, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony.
I have a quick comment to make, and first of all, this is just so amazing hearing your stories. It's very inspiring. So thank you for joining us today and sharing. I just wanted to make a quick comment, Franco, building on what you said, which is that, what happens when you're alumni and you graduate. I was reminded of an organization in India called the Azim Premji Foundation, and they were on a panel here at this conference with other foundations. And one of the questions that was asked is, when do you know that the work is done and you move on? Every other foundation there said, oh, we work with the people who are working there, and we see that this project has reached a culmination, and we think about what to do next. What blew me away about what the person from the Azim Premji Foundation said, they said, what does it mean that the work is done? The work is never done. This is something that is ongoing. So the question of leaving, of moving on, just doesn't arise. So I just wanted to make that point, which I really, really appreciate and resonated with sort of this previous experience I had with an organization in India working on very different things around education and empowerment and so on. But I think this point of that this work is never really done, I think is a very important one for an organization or a group of people to think about. So I know, Kurt, you've been waiting very patiently, so I will
Thank you
pass
so
it on
much.
to you.
So I have an assembly of comments. I want to know if Chris wants to jump in before I mention them. Okay. So first off, Astrid, if you could help us out and send Lydia maybe some contact people from the United World Colleges that might want to appear on a future show, that would be really helpful. Or myself, but I'm sure you've got Lydia's email and can send her that rather quickly. Thank you for that. It's rather, I looked it up. It's rather interesting, actually. It would follow on what we're talking about here. So I'm going to put out 4 or 5 different things and ask you to comment on one of them, each of you to comment on one of them. So, and they relate to scale, affordability, history, replicability, and digital movement. But the history has been answered by Franco just now, so we've cut that one off the list. So thank you for detailing the history of this, of Encino, Peru. But the other 4 maybe haven't as much. If you came to our first shows 6+ years ago, you have heard my co-hosts constantly talking about scalability. And I was always listening attentively to those discussions. I didn't have a whole lot to say, but now they've educated me maybe in ways that I hadn't planned. And now I'm really become more sensitive to scalability than I was in the past. So given that you have 6,000 young people involved in Encino Peru, I wonder how you attain that scalability and what advice you have for other small projects to become that scalable or even more so. Many of the guests that we've had on this show have started initiatives and programs that are very small, pilot studies. Some of them evolve rather quickly, some of them slowly, some of them disband after a year or 2. So scalability is one, and related to that, I'm a former accountant. I'm interested in affordability. How does one pay for such a thing, such a project? Is that a concern? History of the program, of course, is important, embedded in all this, the context of how it evolved, so as to help replicability. What are the principles or components that are included in Encino Peru that are important for others to consider or keep in mind when they're developing their programs? And then, and by the way, I found the introduction of Encino Peru by Riorella and Astrid and Franco to be reminiscent of the open education movement, that there is no criteria to get involved. There is no barrier, no challenge. Those barriers have come down, and if people want to get involved, they can. And people want an education, they can go to open universities without worrying about their GPAs and other kinds of things, not necessarily anyhow. And finally, digital movement. The title in this program is Stewarding Digital Youth-Led Movements, and all 5 co-hosts come from the field of learning technologies and digital learning, forms of learning. So I wonder if anyone wants to comment on how you maintain membership and inform others and recruit people through the digital movement. What does that involve? What do we mean by digital movement? So if each of you could address one of those things maybe, and then we can move to Chris and back to Lydia. So pick anything.
It was scale. The second one, Kurt,
Affordability.
Affordability,
yeah,
replicability, and digital movement.
And replicability and digital movements. We got history already. So any of those things.
Great. I'd love to jump in for like the digital part. The financial part, honestly, has always been a challenge for any single, especially right now, since there's much shrinking like budgets that any company is willing to give to nonprofits. I mean, it's happening to Teach for All as a network. It has been happening for Teach for Peru. I mean, Enseña Peru. I've personally worked with Franco for like some reports to some of our donors, to like convince them to like, hey, keep financing this, right? But so it's challenging. I couldn't say much, but I'm sure that Fiorella has some more ideas on that regarding Wake Up Now, because I know that Wake Up Now is really really good regarding financial like any fin affordability of the project. Anyway, going back to digital learning, I think one of the main things that comes up in what how and why was Enseña Peru so, or like the leadership programs, the long ones and the short ones, so like achievable. It's because they are digital, right? Because you can, it's so much more, it's so easier to just like get a phone, jump into a Zoom meeting than like, I don't know, going to some specific place, asking permission from your parents, and all of this like logistical stuff that you gotta solve first. Especially if you count people from rural areas, as Fiorella. Fiorella's from a rural area, right? Like if the program hadn't been virtual, then most likely there would have been so many more challenges to connect to it. In my case, I have very strict parents that would have never let me go anywhere, right? So the fact that that it was virtual definitely like aided the whole process. I would say that one of the big things that maybe changed a lot over the last years because of the huge globalization movement and the advance of technology is that we didn't, I mean, in the past we would have needed like, I don't know, a physical place and like, do things like the old way, like the hard way, that you can touch things. But now like you don't, to create, for example, for me to create peer reviews, I didn't need anything as like inputs, right? I just needed my ideas, some people that went into work, and access to Instagram, you know? So it was not that challenging. I would say that one of the, as Fiorella and I mentioned, like we even like came across Enseña Peru because of Instagram. So I always hear my parents complaining about like, oh my gosh, social media is so catastrophic. Yes, it's a tool, and I think that Enseña Peru found a way to like use it as a very, very good tool. I can say that in my case, when I wanted to find peer reviews, I just like went ahead and opened an Instagram account. I started following a lot of people, following other initiatives, creating posts with like my free account on Canva, um, and sending messages, creating webinars on Zoom, on Google Meet. Especially, for example, most of the peers that I've worked with in peer reviews, I have never met in person. Never, right? Because we have mostly worked from different parts of Peru, and we have connected like through Zoom, through Google Meet. We have like shared Google documents and all of this. I think that that's a really important part for the whole permissionless activities, right? Because when you want to do something, I mean, peer reviews, I wanted to do it so many times that is like in person. You need to deal with so many logistics. You need to get the place, you need to get the invites, you need to get the transport, the food, the permissions. So many more things come in that, for example, as a teenager, they wouldn't give it to you, right? If I want to go and rent a local, like a small place, um, then they will be like, oh no, but you're underage. I need like your parents' permission, or I need a document signed. And like then you find the whole bureaucratic like hell that you gotta deal with. And I mean, that it's basically impossible, especially if you're underage. So because we have social media, we get to take things into our hands, right? I didn't need permission of anybody to open an Instagram account and call it peer reviews and start like uploading things in there, right? I think that was one of the main things that you can like use with digital tools. And then the other thing is, of course, you overcome distance. Again, as I mentioned, you just get people from everywhere. It doesn't matter where they're from. If they want to collaborate, then they collaborate. Um,
So
and
I'll
I was,
interrupt you there,
yes,
if it's
definitely.
okay, because I want to be sensitive to Punya and Chris have questions too, and I want to get around to everyone else. So Franco and Frola, if you could maybe answer that like a short 1 minute answer so we can go to Punya's question, and then Chris, or Chris and then Punya.
I can go with scaling. Consistency. We've done this short program 18 times. The ethical side is no selection process. We welcome everyone for the more massive. And I'd say also part of the scale is for students not to hold themselves from doing leadership, that has to do with being really mindful about the narrative. Who can exercise leadership? So many students, they wouldn't participate because they don't see themselves as potential leaders today. And that was key for us to address that part of the narrative, I would say. That made everyone come into what they thought to see a much more welcoming place than the common stereotypes of what it means to be a leader that they have heard all of their life. So I said, even if I haven't done anything, even if I just have an idea, I might not have awards, I might have never done something like that, this is still a welcoming place for me. And I think that was key to scale, because you can also scale, but also exclude through scaling. We could have had 6,000 of people and celebrate the 6,000 while not knowing that there were another group that didn't fall within the stereotype. I'd say that there are kinds of scale.
Thank you for that. And Astrid, by the way, we've never met as a complete group of co-hosts. AI has produced a picture of all of us recently. It looks like we've met, but we've never met. So digital learning, your points are spot on, and really relate that to Silver Lining for Learning. For Riorella?
Okay, I would like to comment more, to talk more about how it functions, the PDLE, because we are talking about general things, but maybe to go deeper in how this ecosystem functions. So, okay. Um, so it's a much larger ecosystem. Like our first interaction with PDLE are the short programs, where we always, when this short program ends, we always want more. Like, it's not enough the short program, and for that reason is that exists the long programs, where you can, well, develop a project that really that you are really connected and you want and that really moves you, but then also after we end this long program, when we are graduated, job opportunities open up. And I'll give you a few examples. For example, one of them is leadership campaigns in rural areas. I was part of this opportunity, and also different researches are conducted around the program ecosystem, and the evaluations are constantly carried out. So there is um, uh, and also other interesting thing is that we have Cafecito PDLE, that where you can connect with a person who already end his short program, with someone who it's new in all this ecosystem. So you can connect, and you can talk about different things, like talk about life. It's like you are the mentor, and there are mentees. So you can talk about fears or different things that are going through your mind, or maybe help with how to manage organization, or search for how could they search for opportunities and things like that. So there are different tools who help us to sustain this ecosystem.
So can I stop you there just for this, because we've only got 6 minutes left for the show, I think, or so. I hate to cut anyone off, but I want to go on to Punya. Punya, you want to jump in here?
Oh, Chris has been waiting very patiently. I got a word in. So, Chris, why don't you go ahead?
Well, I just have a quick historical perspective. About 6 decades ago, when I was in your age range, I was part of a generation that had quite a controversy with adult society about the role of youth. And what we basically said was, we're old enough to get concussions doing sports for you. We're old enough to make minimum wage so that you can make a lot of money. We're old enough to die for you if we get drafted, but we're not old enough to vote. What the hell is that about? And of course, the answer was, well, you don't understand enough to vote, but you certainly can do all those other things. So there's sort of tension between an enforced mixture of childhood when people don't want you, quote, interfering, unquote, and adulthood when you can serve some useful purpose for adults isn't a new one. And I'm wondering to what extent you get pushback from at least some people who say, you're playing with dolls, kind of. It's pretend. You're too young, really, to be leaders or to influence society. You're just going to mess things up. I'm curious as to whether that's an issue that you face to some extent.
Well, since we're very limited on time, I could answer super quick. Yes, we have faced that. And I think what I've always said is that, like, well, I'm doing something, right? Yes, I might be young, I might get it wrong, I will do it again. But I think the only way to prepare me to understand society and to understand adulthood is to, like, give me the opportunity to do this, right? So to all the adults that have always been like, you shouldn't do this, you're not young enough, you're not adult enough for this. I'm just like, well, I'm trying to learn how to do it. And I think that a lot of adults do not realize how smart young people are because we have worked really hard and we deal with different society than back then. And I think we can do it, right? And that's what, for example, other adults that enable this, like Franco, they're like, well, if it's kind of hard, you just have to keep going, right? And I think that's why we always keep on our heads that we might be young enough, we might be young, but we're really smart, and that's the only way through to prepare ourselves for society through going through it, right?
I would just add that there are some battles between adults as well about this. So, for example, it wasn't easy to convince the organization to hire 18-year-olds for major roles that you would usually, like have said, but they don't have a title and they don't have experience and they don't know. And so the other side of battles is the very real battles that adults also have to I was fortunate enough to be in a position of power to make those things happen, no, but that doesn't always happen. And I think that there is an opportunity to adults that are trying to do this work, in my view, by far, are not well connected yet across the world. And that is a real opportunity, I would say. It's a silent battle for many.
So I also wanted to comment something quickly. It's like not to see as two different worlds, like adults and teenagers. Like we can't create something beautiful, something great, if we integrate these both worlds, because there are like adults have experience and teenagers want a guy from someone. So we see adults as like that, like or guys, and it would like really good if more adults believe in teenagers, and also because we have opinions, or we are really smart, and it's really different when in it empower us to really believe in ourselves and that we are capable of do many things as adults, but working together also with adults, not to really like totally a vertical relationship, but more horizontal, an horizontal relationship. So yeah.
I'd also say I'm really hopeful because 5 years ago, the age average was 16. Now the average is 20. And in 10 years, the age average of people that have lived this experience, the new generation of adults, like Theo and Astrid, will come by the thousands in Peru, at least, no? That because at some point I also make the switch of they are already adults, early adults, but then this is a new generation of adulthood coming as well, by the thousands.
That's a beautiful statement for us to maybe end with, but Punya wants to jump in, I think, here.
Oh,
Right,
no,
Punya?
no. I was just nothing really specific in that sense. I think, yeah, we are at time. So, Lydia, do you want to close out for today?
Yeah, I can't believe it's been an hour.
I know.
It's
It went by so fast.
I know, and then I feel like this can definitely go on for another hour at least. So thank you so much to all of you, our guests today. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us. We are all very, very inspired. And so I think now we are going to go on a summer break for Silver Lining for Learning for us to regroup ourselves and to bring even better shows for all of you starting August 1st.